Hey there, it's me Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the description. I was kind of scared shuffling into school on the first day of 4th grade. I had heard all the rumors about Miss Rau, my future teacher, how she disliked all the boys and made the girls her favorites, and worse, how she punished the kids in her class. I mean, I had known some of the kids in her class, and they were miserable all the time. Until summer vacation, that is. Just the other day I had been playing soccer with Mike Jiffin and Donald Slack, who had endured a year of the dread Rau and survived. They were telling me that I'd better behave or I'd get my knuckles whacked by the Rau ruler, or worse. And when I asked, like what? Donald just said, "You don't want to know." So I shuffled on into school, past the display cases and the welcome banners, and made a right down the hall to Ms. Rau's classroom. She was seated in front of the room, her graying hair hanging loosely around her face. When she looked up from her book, smiling and asking me my name, I noticed a sharp tooth on one side of her mouth. It was jagged and pointed and scary. "Robert," I said. "Are you Merton? Or are you Robert Masted?" she asked. "Two of you this year, and both with M." "Masted," I said. "Do you have a sister named Victoria?" she asked. "Yes." "Oh, I think I had her a few years ago." "Did she tell you about me?" "A little." As a matter of fact, my sister Victoria had been in Ms. Rau's class 4 years ago and enjoyed it. Not that I had asked for her opinion, though. My sister and I didn't get along well at all. She would bully me and try to boss me around, because she was older. She would always try to con me into playing with her. But playing with Victoria was about as much fun as cold eggs, so I avoided her at all costs. So I went to my assigned seat between John Lawrence and Robbie Merton and waited for the bell to ring. She had been pretty nice, I thought, but then nice old Ms. Clark last year turned out to be a real pain. The bell rang and Ms. Rau went to the blackboard and wrote her name. She appeared young, despite the graying hair, and she wore black pants and a cream-colored blouse, which I thought was unusual, since most teachers wore dresses. She turned and began to address the class. "Hello, class. I am Ms. Rau, and no doubt some of you may have already heard a little bit about me. It's true that I am strict and that I do punish those who break the rules, but it's also true that the girls and boys in my classes do very well in the 5th grade and middle school. And I also have found that my classes are very well behaved. So now I want to spend a moment with you to go over the rules of this classroom. The first and most important rule is that you must obey your teacher. Does everyone understand?" "Yes," we all said, not at the same time, but nodding our heads. She repeated the usual list of rules: no talking out of turn, no making a mess, put things back where you find them, turn in your homework when asked, don't chew gum, no hurting any other kids, no spitting, no making rude noises. Johnny Lawrence raised his hand and said, "Does that mean we can't go a PFFFFFFRRRHHHRRRTT, making the fart noise and laughing?" We all started laughing too. Except some girls, who pretended to be disgusted and made faces. Ms. Rau smiled and I caught a look at her pointy tooth and I was scared again. She continued. "Actually, I was just about to get to the punishments. Now, class, what rules did this young man just break?" Several girls raised their hands. None of the boys did. She called on the girls one by one. "He made rude noises," said Kelly Hunt. "Correct," said the teacher. "He talked out of turn," said Wendy Stedman. "He sure did," said Ms. Rau. "He spit," said Mary Dieter. "So he did," said the teacher. "Anybody else?" She paused. "He did break one other rule, class. Does anybody know which?" "Girls," she paused again. Class, this young man broke the most important rule. Do you remember which one? She paused, and when no one responded, she said, Class, this boy did not obey the teacher. That is the first and most important rule. Obey the teacher. Now when boys and girls break the rules, they will be punished, just as they would be punished in every class. Her tooth seemed to gleam as she placed her hands on her hips and smiled broadly. She leaned forward as she walked towards the class. You have all been given 100 points in my book. No one will be promoted to 5th grade unless they have 100 points at the end of the year. If you behave and obey all the rules and obey me, you will not lose any points and you will be promoted to 5th grade. If you disobey me and break the rules and misbehave, you will not have 100 points at the end of the year, and you will have to repeat 4th grade. Simple enough, right? As before, we nodded and babbled our reply disjointedly and out of time. Right. Okay, young man, Robert. Masted, will you please tell the class about punishments? I was on the spot. I had never been one to talk in class, although I often knew what to say. The other kids teased me a lot, but then, lots of kids got teased. I took a deep breath and gave it the old 4th grade try. You said that if we behaved, we would get to go on to 5th grade, but if we misbehave, we have to repeat 4th grade. Good, said Ms. Rau, but I had not finished. And you have 100 points, but if you misbehave you don't have 100 points. Very good, said Ms. Rau, but I had not finished. But Ms. Rau, I don't understand how you get to have 100 points to begin with. I mean, why does it start with 100? Isn't that kind of stupid? Ms. Rau's face was red. She still smiled, but she seemed a bit shaky, unsteady, and the tooth was clenched tightly against her lips, making a small white spot. Robert. Robert Masted. She said my name. I was really scared. My stomach was in knots, but at the same time, I felt light, like when you go over a bump in a car, or when you're flying in a plane and you hit turbulence. Reflexively, I stood up. My eyes seemed to roll back into the dreamland of my head. I could not believe I had angered the teacher so much, the dreaded Ms. Rau, and on the first day of school. It was the laughter of my classmates that brought me back. I felt a warm sensation on my upper left thigh, near my crotch, and I looked down at my blue pleated pants to see the expanding dark splotch where I had wet myself. Robert, you might as well start with 0 points, said Ms. Rau. Come on now, let's get you cleaned up. As for the rest of you, sit quietly until I get back. Then, looking at Johnny Lawrence, she said, and you, young man who made the rude noises, don't think I've forgotten about what you did. As we walked down the hall together, each step a bigger humiliation than the last, my wet pants drooping lower and feeling heavier, Ms. Rau laid it on the line for me. Robert, she said, I don't know what kind of boy you are. I haven't had the chance to talk to any of your old teachers about you, nor have I met any of your parents. Mr. Denmark may or may not hear about this little incident, but I will ask him about your behavioral record. But I don't have dash, I started to say. Don't interrupt, she continued. Now do you have this problem regularly? Do you still wet yourself? Do you wet your bed at night? Do your parents know? I had never had the problem before, and I hadn't wet the bed since I was about 3, over half a lifetime ago, so my parents certainly didn't know. So I said, no, this is the first time. I see, said Ms. Rau. And what do the other kids think of you? Do they call you names like baby or sissy? No. I said. I get along okay with most of the other kids. Said Ms. Rau. By then we were almost to the principal's office. I knew that if we went in to see Mr. Denmark, it would be the beginning of a series of very embarrassing events, involving my parents, the nurse, Ms. Rau, and whoever else. I desperately didn't want anyone to think that I had a problem. "Okay, we'll go in here," said my teacher, pointing to the teacher's lounge. "We'll get you changed now, and we won't have to see Mr. Denmark, but you have to promise to do me a few favors, okay?" Of course, I was so relieved at not having to deal with the principal that I would have agreed to anything at that moment. "Take off your clothes. I have some extra clothes here that you can wear." I gladly took off my pants because they were soaked, but I hesitated to take off my damp underwear. "Go on, Robert, it's nothing new to me." "I'm not interested in seeing you naked, just cleaned up," she said, turning towards the sink. I took off my underpants, and she handed me a warm, damp sponge, which I used to clean myself off. Next she handed me a pair of very thick white cotton underpants with little pink rosebuds and lace around the legs and waist, and a pair of stretchy bright red pants. No, they were more like overalls, with 2 suspender straps that crossed in the back. They had no pockets and 2 zippers, one on each side, with big white buttons at the waist, where the suspenders were attached. I was astonished, and blurted, "But these are for girls." Ms. Rau smiled gently, her sharp tooth catching the light, and said, "No, Robert, they're for little boys who unfortunately wet themselves on the first day of school. Now just put them on. It's only until this afternoon, when your pants and underpants dry." I did as I was told, remembering that the most important rule is, always obey the teacher. I put on the thick, rose-printed lacy underpants and stepped into the pants with 2 zippers. It was awkward, trying to zip up the zippers on the side, and harder still to button the pants, so Ms. Rau helped me, saying, "Oh, you didn't tuck in your shirt, here, let me." We walked back down the hall together, and I was grateful that I didn't have to go to the principal's office, but I wasn't sure I was happy to be facing the world wearing stretchy red pants with suspenders over my nice light blue first day of school button-down shirt. It felt funny, wearing the thick underwear, and the pants were not cut loose, the way I was used to. They were kind of tight, and they came up past my belly button, and it was weird not having the zipper in front. Please subscribe my channel for the next part. And visit my Patreon page for early access.